welcome to What Juices You. Here is where we explore what energizes leaders and how the energy fuels performance, connection, and growth. And I am Brady Wilson from Juice Inc. In this episode, I get to sit down with Mr. Kris MacQueen, a senior facilitator, and developer. And today, want to welcome you, Kris, and say hello to these good listeners.
Yeah, thanks. And so I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Here's the reality. Brady and I work together an awful lot. We spend a lot of time in front of various teams speaking about the things that are energizing for folks, getting clear on what is it that is energizing. And so I'm looking forward to this. And we thought that it would be really helpful to take some time together and to talk about something that is really critical and core to our work together, and also informs a lot of the work that we're exploring in the podcast as well as a general theme. And so Brady and I are going to be stepping into a conversation about something that we call the 5 driving needs. And then actually this is the very first part of a series of episodes where we're going to explore each one of those 5 driving needs uniquely, because they all deserve some airtime. And so this is an opportunity for the two of us to really explore how we see these things, encounter them, and to find out where they came from. And so I'm going to slip over into the question asker for a moment, because I remember the first time I encountered this particular way of thinking about our driving needs. I was with a group of leaders. I was out west, and Brady was actually there facilitating a session for us. And I remember sitting there. It was new to me. And language really coming alive, and some sense making was happening in the back of my brain and actually in my heart as I was starting to see things just coming together and understanding why I was energized by certain things and depleted in other areas. And so, Brady, I would love to actually ask you if you could just tell us the backstory. First of all, what are the 5 driving needs? Sure. And then how did you sort of refine, we've got this universe of needs, and we're gonna distill this down and capture them in these 5 core driving needs. Just tell us about that process a little bit.
You bet. Yes, where we are today is belonging, security, freedom, significance, and meaning. And as one could imagine, they didn't start out like that. In 2002, 2003, and this is tough for me. I'm 67. I can't even remember what I had for breakfast, and it's only 10:05. But you know how it goes. You can remember the things that happened 20 years ago. So we started working with organizations to try to figure out how can we, as quickly as possible, generate a conversation between 2 people or more and get to what's really going on in their world. And so we thought at that point, could we just get people talking about their emotions around 4 different things? I fit in my role. I fit on this team here. I feel like I fit in my organization. The values and what we stand for, our purpose, really resonate with me. So I fit was important. Emotion. And then I'm clear. So things are predictable. The big picture is not opaque to me, and all those types of things. I understand the expectations my manager has of me and what I need to do to hit the mark. The next one was I feel supported, that sense of dependable support. I got all the training and tools and systems and processes. My manager has my back, supported. And that was an important emotion. And the last one, it was only 4 at that point, and it was I feel valued. And so that sense of my leaders take interest in me as a person, not as corporate chattel, not as a piece of furniture, not as a cog in a whole system or machine, but they take interest in me as a person. I feel I'm treated fairly. I feel like when I hit it out of the park, somebody notices and actually says something in an appropriate manner that causes me to kind of walk a bit taller. So we started going to town with those 4 emotions. And it became clear to me that an emotion can be quite transitory. And so you can have that emotion of I fit 1 week, and something can happen in your team the next week, that can cause it to evaporate. And so we started to look at, what if there's something that's more enduring? What if, let's just say that, Kris is sitting in his upstairs office right now, and the temperature in that office, just today, not to date stamp this, but we're in the middle of summer, and it is incredibly hot. But that's just the temperature in his office. And so what's the weather like? And that's something that's more
It's a broader
pervasive.
question.
It is. And so there is the emotion, and then we talked about, okay, what's the state of being? And so when we really started to dig into the state of being around I fit, I started to look at that, and the research out there around belonging and how vital that was. And I'm not going to go into that right now because we'll dive into it. I'm clear. Started to realize, oh, that is about that state of security. And then, of course, that I'm supported. When I feel supported, it gives me a sense of, okay, I have autonomy and freedom. And when I feel valued, it really taps into that deeper state of significance and I matter. And so that happened for, probably 2005 or 6 on for a while. And then we just started to realize, and Kris, you see this in our work all the time, that when I experience not just the transitory emotion, which can come and go, beautiful, but we want something more enduring, I get into the state of being, we started to realize, oh my goodness, it fuels us.
Right.
It drives us in a good way, and in a way that actually can be more predictable than those transitory feelings. And so we started to realize, okay, we've got some needs here. They're not preferences. So we love Myers-Briggs, True Colors, DISC, Colby, go on and on and on, because they talk about our styles, they talk about our preferences, and those are important. But we started to realize, oh, wow, belonging, actually, it's not a preference. It's not, something that's part of our style. It's a need. And so our good friend Maslow,
Yes.
popularized, and he got a lot of things right. And I think a lot of people today would say there were a few things that, just given the research, the window that he had, he didn't realize that it didn't need to be sequential. And so,
Right.
for instance, he was saying, you can't get up to meaning and that sense of self-actualization if you don't have a sense of belonging and connection. Well, we found out, after Viktor Frankl's work, that a person could be even in a concentration camp and have no sense of security, no sense of even of real connection or belonging, and yet have that sense of meaning. And so they weren't as sequential as we thought. And so we started to go to the business world and say, what if we could increase that level of acuity and intelligence around our needs, the same way that we're doing with emotional intelligence? Could we have some literacy around our needs? And when we did, we saw leaders who, when we asked them about belonging or freedom, they go, I have no idea what I can't even name what I need right now. And so that literacy around needs became so vital to us. So we started doing, and what we would now call what juices you. It's about, but the archaic version of that was the energy check in 2003, 2004. And yeah, that took us where we are. So anyway, that's enough background to kind of finish off your question, I think.
No, I love it. And so, if I just reflect back what I'm hearing, we start with really measuring the impacts, right? So when I think about, what do you feel about these core areas? And I think, you listen back and you think, yeah, those are really important. Do I fit? Am I clear? I mean, these are things that are not very difficult to answer because they're feelings. And so starting with impact. But then this movement towards something that really gets a little bit more to the backstory, to cause. And one of the things that I really love about that shift, we do need emotional literacy as well, and that's still a big part of the things that just the impacts that we see on teams when that gets lost. But when we can start to identify these driving needs, and I'll just add in here anecdotally, and it is anecdotal. I can't say that I've got hard research to support this, but in our conversations with teams, it's amazing how I have never heard anybody say, I am missing something here. When we ask them to step in and start to identify, it's been really fascinating to me, this fairly comprehensive model. And the thing that I really love about it, that we can start to talk about here, is when we can get clear on the fact that there are some driving needs, 5 that we found, we can start to cultivate those. So get out ahead, not always chasing impact, because by the time an emotion is being felt, guess what? There is a series of events that have taken place, and either that is a positive or I don't want to say negative, but a really helpful or a less helpful emotion that we might be experiencing in our bodies, in our brains, in our work ethics, right? And so when we can start to move towards cultivating these things, getting intentional, making sure we're making investments in these areas, it can really yield down the road a much more intentional and much more beneficial, virtuous kind of impact. And so I love that. And, you talked about energy and realizing that there's a through line here. Actually, when these needs get met, people seem to show up with more energy. I would love to hear you talk a little bit about how just the relationship to the inverse of that, which is what happens when those needs are specifically unmet or ignored or stuffed down into perpetuity, what some of the things are that you've seen out there, and some of the language I know that you've cultivated around that, because I think it's actually also very instructive.
Yes. The beauty of this, I think, is that there isn't a person in the business community who's been around for more than a week who doesn't have their own very personal experience that they can locate and they can talk about, and it is clear to them that when I do a great job and I have made progress and I've learned and I've taken on a challenge and I hit it out of the park, when there is a vacuum of appreciation or recognition and there's just crickets, it's not that I am doing it to get the pat on the back. It's not that that was my motivation. But if there is day after day, and sometimes week after week, month after month, and I've got one of my kids is in a situation like this right now, you know what? What happens is there is something predictable that happens to our energy. And it is, I am slugging it out, and there's an open loop in my brain. And that open loop is, will I be seen? Do I matter? Do I have any significance here? Is my contribution actually showing up on anybody's radar screen? That open loop is running. And that open loop consumes a ton of current, tons of voltage in our brain. And so when it doesn't get closed by a leader who just in an appropriate way brings somebody aside and say, hey, I just want to tell you in concrete terms how your contribution is changing the environment on the team and how people are getting their needs met, but also for our clients and what it's doing for our organization. Thank you. Like, keep it up. It's like, just want to know, we notice. Well, that took 20 seconds. And what happens is that person now walks away with the loop closed. I matter. I'm significant. I have value here, and I can go for another 5 weeks and just give my very, very best because it's a driving need. And when it gets met, energy is released. When it doesn't get met, then depletion starts to set in. And it's, there's a best before date, right, Kris? How long can one or will one go without a sense of meaning, without a sense of significance, without a sense of freedom, without a sense of security or belonging? Well, depending on your work ethic, depending on your values, depending on your history, what was modeled to you by your parents, you can slug it out for a certain amount of time. But that window, I think, in our culture these days, we had a culture of loyalty, obligation, of soldiering on just out of duty. Well,
Right.
duty is it's in the museum somewhere, and so and so we can predict that when those needs go unmet, we are we you and I always talk about these needs as oxygen like, and so you can't go for too long without oxygen. I know that you have done the amazing feat of going without it for 5 minutes.
That's another story for another day, but yes, it happened
Yeah,
once.
but at 5 minutes, like you're going to be, if somebody was to prolong that, you'd be flailing around in some
Trouble.
very, yeah, exactly. So if those needs go unmet, we now know that people will begin to exhibit behaviors in service of getting the need met that don't look skillful at all. So, for example, someone for whom affiliation, relationship, connection, I'm part of this team and is really fueling for you. So belonging, if that is one of their key driving needs and they are going without, they don't know where they stand on the team. There's gossiping happening. Whenever they walk through the office, everybody's kind of starting to whisper to each other. It's like, if you experience that, and you need belonging, well, pretty soon you're going to start to exhibit behaviors that will get you your belonging, but in a very unskillful way. And so you
And
can actually
for
go ahead.
sure, it's funny, you say that. And when I think depleted, when I think exhausted, sometimes I can imagine like the slump,
Yeah.
the right, which that happens sometimes. But when we talk about what we're not just talking about that, we're also talking about energy leaks or being siphoned. And I think about like often when I experience missing, one of these needs goes missing. What actually happens for me is a very acute deployment of like a high focus of my energy in behaviors to try to get that need met. Right. So when we talk about we've got a swimming metaphor, and when we're in trouble, oxygen is front and center. And we all know, anyone who knows how to swim knows that the floundering moves that you see taking place, that is a very ineffective way of staying afloat.
Yeah.
But it is a massive deployment of
Yeah.
energy and resource. And so it's like you can get drained so quickly by the responses and the reactions. I had this, I was playing golf the other day and it wasn't going well. And I increasingly worked harder and just shot more and more poorly.
Yeah.
And so this is what I'm hearing in this, that yes, there can be the drain that can result from exhaustion, but that's not just what we see are people slumped back, but sometimes it is people coming with incredible intensity in one particular area or another. And that might actually be a response to a lack of something rather than just some virtuous pursuit. And I think that that's really interesting. And so when we think about how do we intelligently deploy our energy, well, that is from a place of knowing that we actually do have our needs met, being able to rely there to really focus our thinking and our intentionality in terms of how we bring ourselves forward. It's really interesting. I was thinking about this just the other day in preparing for our conversation here, reflecting back on, hey, what a moment in particular where needs went unmet. And what's interesting is that there are needs, like all of us, we could look at those 5 driving needs and probably pick our 1 or 2 favorites,
Yep.
right? The 1 or 2 that we would say, yeah, more often than not, that is front and center for me. And sometimes we can actually sort of denigrate the other ones or say, well, does it really matter? Because it doesn't necessarily, it's not a felt need for us. And, for me, safety and belonging can sometimes be in that zone. I just don't think a lot about those things.
Yep.
And I'm remembering an instance many years ago. I was working in a bookstore, managing a particular department within. It was a larger store, and I was doing a tour with the owner of the store, and somebody with whom I had a lot of trust, a lot of respect, and we were walking around. I'm going to call her Jen. It's not her name, but I'm going to call her Jen. We were walking around, and we were in one of the areas of the store that I was overseeing. And Jen said, Kris, that idea that you mentioned to me the other day, I just want to say thumbs up, like, let's do it. And I looked at her with a completely blank expression. My wheels are spinning back. I simply have no idea what she's talking about. And I said, Jen, can you I'm trying to get a bead on what it is that you're saying. And she said, no, this thing, and you had this idea, and we're going to restructure it and do this. And it was just yesterday. It was 11 o'clock. It was in the morning. And we sat here, and you had this idea. And I said, Jen, I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. And she looked at me and said, Kris, I am really concerned for you right now. Are you okay? And I said, well, I'm at a loss, but tell me what my idea was, and I'll get it done. And we kind of left the conversation that way. Did I leave the conversation alone as I walked away from that? Absolutely not, because I am, first of all, I'm very mystified. What is going on? Did I have a memory lapse here? And I also feel like I have lost some esteem, a sense of that closeness with the individual that with this Jen, and I feel very unsafe now.
Right.
And so I spend the next hour and a half interviewing all of my fellow colleagues who this is the scenario. Does this ring a bell for you? And then finally, one of my colleagues says, that wasn't you, that was me. And the flood of relief that came over me. But then I go back to Jen and say, Jen, it was actually Frank. And she said, oh, so it was, and walked away. And so what does this have to do with anything? Well, she had first of all, mistaken identity. So sense of belonging maybe dropped, significance maybe dropped a little bit in that.
Sure.
But there was something for me that out of the blue came under threat. And my productivity in terms of what I was supposed to be working on went to precisely 0. Mm-hmm. Trying to resolve, make sense of what was going on, get some understanding, and kind of reclaw my way back into good graces and confidence, right? And so this was a moment of just real interruption for me, and I really didn't get anything else accomplished in service of trying to get that. And then, these things can show up out of the blue, completely off the radar, and then all of a sudden your afternoon plan, it is out the window because you have to get a need met.
I love that. And there's a few reasons why, but one of the main ones is that one could imagine that if your need goes unmet, to your point, it's a slump. And so you're exhibiting no energy whatsoever. That's not true. And so we know that there are 2 types of people in an organization, those who are energizers and those who are depleters. Well, it's not that simple, because on any given day, I can be an energizer in the morning and I can be a depleter in the afternoon. So it's not just 0 energy. There are 2 types of energy. There is a very productive positive, forward moving, generative type of energy that we can all exhibit and display. And there is something that is very toxic, cynical, apathetic, poisonous, actually. And so if we think now back to the belonging person who doesn't get their needs met, don't know where they stand on the team, and now we're looking at 5 people out for lunch. And 2 of those people are pretty engaged. 2 of them are kind of like in the middle. And then we got that person right there. And that person is talking about their experience and how this organization treats people and the purpose that we're always touting. But what really happens is this: well, what's going to happen at that table? Will people walk away at the end of lunch with a residue of energy and a sense of purpose and a sense of optimism about the future of the organization? No, of course not, because that type of energy, that negative, soul-sucking type of energy, it is powerful because nobody at that table wants to be seen as the Pollyanna, well, I want you to look at it this way, though, right? We don't want to step into that because the power of cynicism is very forceful, and it's hard for anyone to counteract that in the moment. And so when we don't get our needs met, it's not just a kind of a neutral thing. It can turn into something that can take a team from engaged and energized to quite a muted experience and a muted sense of purpose and drive, etc. So this is the stuff of life we're talking about here, as opposed to, your style and my style don't match up with each other. Yeah, that's important. We've got to learn how to flex our styles to work with each other. But when we're talking about driving needs, we're talking about oxygen.
Yeah, 100%. And just thinking about the gravitational pull of unmet needs, as much as we wish that this was an even thing, and we know that virtuous energy is inspiring, but somehow there is a certain gravitational pull that lives in unmet needs that can have such an impact and can start to really suck some of that lightness into the void, right? And so when we think about the needs and the interplay here, because again, we're going to be exploring into some of the particulars, each one of them actually we're going to take time and explore in future episodes. But these needs, and it highlights, and I think everything we said, certainly in my story, it's rarely just one need that's impacted. We'll often have people identify what is the most felt need or the thing that we might call their deal breaker, because we need to start somewhere. And so let's start with the critical, the acute place. But the relationship of these needs, that's something that's been really interesting. And I think we can see that in ourselves, but we can't really just necessarily tease them apart. They are distinct, but they are so closely interwoven and interconnected. And just would love to explore that with you as well. The relationship between something like belonging and freedom and significance, the relationship between security and freedom and meaning. These are interesting relationships. And what are some of the things that you've seen out there, or language that you would use to describe just the way these things play together or not?
Yeah. Of course, I've got a bit of a love relationship with these needs. And so the dynamism of them and how they can be in tension with each other is endlessly fascinating to me, and not so much for other people. But I think that once again, we can all relate to someone else in our close circle for whom a different need shows up. So for instance, my wife, Teresa, who I've been married with for 44 years, her driving need in most situations is going to be security. And she would say that if she was on this podcast. My driving need 9 times out of 10 is going to be freedom. One does not have to have a vivid imagination to understand how those two could be in tension with each other. When we're planning a vacation, when we're going out in an activity with our grandchildren, how safe are they going to be? And I'm looking at how much fun are they going to have? And so the joke around our place is Grandpa keeps them happy and Grandma keeps them alive. And so those two are in tension with each other. And what's interesting to me is that the order matters a little bit. I'm not going Maslow on us here, but I kind of think that when we have that feeling of placement, social placement, of affiliation, relationship, trust, connection, this is my tribe. This is my group of people that I know. And I'm also secure, and I feel that sense of, oh, I've got the support, I've got the processes, the systems, the structures, the tools, the predictability, the consistency, the rules, and the fair play. When I put those two together, it can be platform-like. And then there's this one in the middle that when I feel that sense of, okay, I've got oxygen, I can breathe, I've got that platform. Now, if you give me a little bit of agency, and if you give me a little bit of autonomy to be able to make some decisions, to push back, to challenge, to innovate, and to be creative, then I'm going to start to do some stuff, and I'm going to make some progress, and I'm going to put my name on things, and I'm going to get on the map, and I'm going to put a dent in the universe, but not just for status and not just for ego. There's something bigger that's calling me to actually contribute in this world. Whether that's beauty making, or whether that's making things more helpful, whether that's making things easier, whether that's making things more productive, whether that's establishing a higher level of revenue, whatever it is, there is a sense between this significance and meaning that I'm not just doing it for sheer ego drive. There's something greater that's calling me. So when I've got the platform and the foundation, and then just give me this stuff in the middle, these two other things, I think what it allows a person to do is it feels like I'm getting to the end of my world here. And Kris, when I get to the end, I'm only going to be asking one question. Did I matter? Did I matter to my wife? Did I matter to my kids, my grandchildren, to you, the people that I work with, and to my clients? And I think that everything, belonging, security, for all of those are in service of the answer of that question.
Right.
But let's face it, if I am only seeking meaning at the expense of, then I have cut the tension, because my mattering doesn't have any relevance unless it is in the context of relationship. Who do I matter to?
Yeah.
Right? And unless it is in service of people feeling safe and secure around me. So I love how when they're in tension, there's energy right inside that.
Yeah. And something that is really interesting to me listening to you talk, and particularly reverse engineering what you hope the outcome of your life is, and how you need all 5 of those needs, and they have different relationships unto that outcome. And here's what I think is really interesting, and I think maybe the point.
Yeah.
I would choose different language for what I hope is written on my tombstone. Yeah. Right. So for me, I hope that, the residing thought in the people who knew me, and I'm a big impact guy, as you know, I want to make a difference too. But, for me, it is, was Kris faithful to what he was here to do? Did he see it through?
Yeah.
Right. So whether big or small, at the end of the day, that's actually, and to people as well. Right. So kind of, was this a faithful kind of guy? And so it's not the same. It's a little different.
Yeah.
But the constituent parts that yield that outcome are still the same driving needs. They look maybe a little bit different. And when we start to think about, again, the relationship with these things, it can be pretty easy. And we actually see this all the time, where there's a monofocus on the need that is most closely associated with the outcome.
Yep.
And we can surround ourselves rather with people who share that as the primary need. We can build cultures and organizations around that. And that could be such a driving thing. And it might get things done for a while. But when we think about some of the residue, some of the burnout, all of the different, the dirty burn that can show up in that kind of energy when we become monofocused, and just how it can absolutely take, let's think of the human life as a field. And we know this, right? You need to have, fields that have a mono crop. Now, I'm not a farmer, but I've got farming in my family. And year after year after year after year is growing corn.
Yeah.
With no variety, no rest. Predict for me, Brady, what's the condition of that soil going to be in a decade?
Leached.
Right. And I just, as we start to bring this in for a close, this entree into the conversation about the 5 driving needs, I am reading a book again, so I'm rereading this. And Brady, I know you read this book a couple of years ago. We talked about it. Braiding Sweetgrass by, I'm going to read this, Robin Wall Kimmerer. And first thing I want to say about this is that if there's one book that you're going to read next year, I think it should be that one. I'm just really, really moved by it. But there's something that she talks about, which is a practice in First Nations agriculture.
Yeah.
And they talk about the 3 sisters. And so these are 3 plants that the wisdom of traditions, they learned that we plant these 3 together. We grow them together, not independently, because they all have different function. They all have different constituent, again, parts, make contributions to the environment or pull things out of the environment or provide protection from invading species and disease. And so the 3 are, let me see if I can get this without looking at my notes. We're looking at corn as one of them.
Yeah.
Beans are the other. And then squash is the 3rd form of squash. And so there's this beautiful chapter, and that's not really the point. This is not an agriculture lesson. But the needs that we're talking about, here's what I believe. They are not built. They're not manufactured. We actually need to plant them and then grow those seeds. This is something we cultivate. We cultivate belonging. We cultivate that sense of meaningful safety. We cultivate freedom. Again, at least the most virtuous forms. I mean, all of these things have a dark side as well.
Sure.
But when we think about, we need to grow these things. And actually, I think that there's some great wisdom for us in reflecting on the 3 sisters. I believe we need to grow them together. And so when we think about, and as we explore, we're going to talk about belonging, we're going to talk about security, but we will still in those episodes be referencing some of these other needs because they really need each other if we're going to get to this idea of a human being that is making a powerful contribution, hitting their numbers, contributing to the culture of an organization, and still being something a lot more than a shell of a human being when they come back to their family and their friends at the end of the day. And so just want to put a plug in just for the idea and the question. How are we growing these things? Because, we can let them grow in the wild, but we also know that is that's not exactly an efficient deployment of or gathering of resources. So we want to grow them. And I think we want to be cautious of monoculturing. Anything, Brady, that you wanted to add to that, or something else before we close out this episode?
I will just close with being violently agreeing with you in that when we see the best leaders and the impact that they're having, they are not only conversant with all five, but they are planting and cultivating and growing all five, not just for themselves, they certainly are, but for others. And when we see mono-focused leadership on one of the, and who could argue with meaning? And so Simon Sinek wrote the book, and start with why. And I mean, beautiful. And there are several others that have to do with meaning and purpose. I love them all. But when we see a leader, and that is their only currency, if you will, that which, when it's in your pocket, it gives you a sense of power and agency, and I can get stuff done. Well, they now have learned in their life that all you need to fuel a workforce is meaning. And so they over-index on the purpose, the difference we're making in the world. And if you were at the top of, pick an organization, UNICEF, et cetera, meaning-driven, purpose-driven, and if you always play that card and people go, of course, we're about the children around the world. Of course, relief. But I don't feel like I can trust the people on my team. I don't feel like I have the freedom and autonomy to actually make a decision here and to challenge what's not making sense. I don't feel like all the massive work that I'm doing, that anybody ever sees it. Well, you keep playing that meaning card for me, and I am actually inches from burnout because of your monofocus and your inability to grow the other four with that. So I just, Kris, I want to say that that literacy extends beyond one's pet driving need.
Yeah, and I just wish that was just some random illustration that you grabbed at, not UNICEF in particular, but you and I both know the actual hard coded stories that are exactly that one, and just the so. For sure. Yeah. Well, thanks for taking this time and stepping into this, and be looking for the follow up to these. So, of course, we've got conversations that we're having with people who we have worked with and respect about what juices them, and in the mix of all of those, you're going to be seeing some subsequent episodes coming on each one of these driving needs. So, stay tuned for those, and we both hope to. That you'll take the time and spend some more time with us in the episodes that are to come. So thanks for listening.
Thanks for your time today, Kris. It was just a lovely chat.